It's very obvious to me that they've been pecking in the leaves and finding, I'm hoping they're finding snails in there. That's probably the high quality thing they're looking for. But all the stuff that's off to the sides, that's not from wind. That's from birds rooting around in there. Hey, it's Greg here with MaritimeGardening.com, and I'm out here in the garden, and forgive the kind of ridiculous looking get up here. There's some black flies out here, and aside from putting a bug net over my head, which doesn't make for good filming, this is the best way to deal with keeping the bugs out of the ears and stuff. Anyway, not to get off on a diatribe about black flies, I've certainly done that enough. I thought I'd do a quick video today to speak to a certain issue. I've got various pests in my garden, three main pests: slugs, snails. Well, I'm counting them as one thing because they're kind of one thing. Slugs and snails, flea beetles, and whitefly. And really, right now, it's just slugs, snails, and flea beetles. The whitefly don't show up till like July, and they only really affect one category of plant, and that is the various brassicas I have in the garden. Kale, rapini, broccoli, stuff like that, right? Kohlrabi, and so on. So people watch my videos and they say, especially about the snails and slugs, you need ducks. You need ducks. And probably because they've been reading permaculture literature. They probably read Permaculture 1 or Permaculture 2. And that's probably a good solution in many contexts. I really don't live in a situation where I can have ducks, and I imagine a lot of you aren't in a situation where you can just buy ducks and have them in your yard. But what I do have, all over the place, I don't have ducks, but I have birds. Remember, this garden is exposed to the air. Anytime I walk out here, there's robins, sparrows, finches. There's a broad range of different kinds there's even pheasants and rough grouse in here sometimes. So there's a broad range of different kinds of birds that are in here all the time, and they don't eat my vegetables because they're not vegetarian. I mean, they're basically seed eaters and bug eaters for the most part. So they're either eating weed seeds. They don't tend to eat my seeds from my plants, and I have them planted in a straight row, and they're a couple inches deep. If they eat any seeds, of the seeds that are on the very top, which aren't my seeds. Those are like weed seeds that have blown in. Or, especially this time of year when they've got chicks in their nests, they're really focused on gathering insects, sort of high quality, high protein, high fat meals. They're getting grubs, they're getting worms, they're getting other kinds of insects, slugs, snails, especially snails. Things like that offer a good meal for a young baby. So they're here all the time, and they're perpetually pecking in my soil, scratching up my soil. They completely leave my vegetables alone. A lot of people are always saying, the birds ate my peas, the birds ate this, the birds... I would be very surprised. I can't speak to all contexts, but in most cases, a high proportion, 9 out of 10 cases, I would say people that think the birds are eating their vegetables, they're not. Fruit is another thing. If you got cherries or grapes or whatever, of course birds will eat those things. They love berries. But I'm talking about greens. Why would a bird eat green? They can't digest greens. They don't eat spinach. They don't eat Swiss chard. A chicken and certain kinds of birds like that can eat that. They can eat anything. But I'm talking about the kind of wild birds that live in the forest. They got no use for that stuff. They eat seeds and bugs. So when they're in my garden, they're actually solving my problem for me. I don't need ducks because I've got robins, sparrows, blue jays, robins, sparrows, blue jays, finches, grouse, partridge, pheasants. I've got all those kinds of things that come in here and peck around. So I thought I'd just take you around the garden and show you a couple obvious examples of those things working away in the garden. Just for curiosity, so you can see what it looks like to see the evidence of them pecking around. I don't exactly know what they're after, but they're not after my plants. So come, let's have a look. So here's the spot on my garden where I had, I sowed some, I got parsnips right here, and these were started underneath a plastic dome. And this area was outside the plastic dome, so I didn't sow any here. So I sowed some here recently, but the soil was kind of exposed, and I pushed this mulch off to the sides. But you can see how all the mulch has gone back into the row. That's not from wind, because I had this sort of packed down. This is a kind of unique mulch where you take the leaves and you throw it on your lawn, and you mow it with the grass, and it makes a fairly tight a mixture of mulches that really don't blow around too much in the wind. So the reason all that mulch was in this little row here, if you can tell this is a row, was because birds were pecking at it and moving around. And here's another example. I'll show you another spot, the very other end of this garden. So here's a row, and here's a clump of I guess grass sod, and it's been tossed off to the side here. It's in, this is a row right here, and it's in the row, and that's not from wind. That is from a bird casting it aside to get at something that was in the soil. You know, I mean, parsnips, this is a parsnip garden, and generally speaking, I find parsnips to be pest free. There isn't really anything that seems to bother them. The slugs leave them alone, the flea beetles leave them alone, and I mean, you know, if you had rabbits and stuff like that in your garden, they'll take them out. But the insects tend to leave for the most part, leave the parsnips alone. They're fairly pest free. I got lots of ants and stuff in here. I never worry about ants, don't care about ants. I just let them do their thing in here. But anyway, that piece of grass tossed aside there, that's a bird just pushing it aside to get to something. It's not eating, look, I got lots of parsnips, it's not eating those. The birds aren't bothering anything. They're doing a lot of my pest sorting out for me. Here's another neat example. You know, I got all these different rows, and this is alternating rows of beets and salsify. This is salsify and this is beets. You can't really see them because they're still quite small, but they're growing. But see how all this grass has been thrown? This is a row here between the two pieces of cardboard. All this grass has been thrown over there. That's not wind. Generally speaking, clumpy, you know, lawn waste, yard waste grass like this, it doesn't blow around. It sort of knits together and stays in a big clump. It's great for that. Kind of windproof. That's birds pecking away. And I mean, they've been pecking in amongst my beets, but they're not after the beets. They're just pecking after different pests that are in there with the beets, and they're also after different kinds of weed seeds, which I'm fine with them taking those. Right? That's more examples of birds. The other end, there's a big pile like this at the other end as well, and that's been pecked to pieces as well. There's probably a lot of good stuff in there, right? And why is there a pile of stuff at the end? Because when I sowed the seeds here, I just took all the cover and moved it aside and put these strips down. When the plants get a bit bigger, I'll put mulch in between the rows, cover this cardboard with this mulch and other mulch, and this cardboard will just break down. Here's a neat example here. This is a garden where I've got beans down the middle and potatoes growing on either side. And you can see that the leaves that I've used as a mulch all the way down has been pushed aside. I wouldn't know how to look at this morning. I should have filmed it this morning because it was much more obvious. But the reason the leaves are thrown off to the side is because of wind. It's because of birds. It's very obvious to me that they've been pecking in the leaves and finding, I'm hoping they're finding snails in there. That's probably the high quality thing they're looking for. But all the stuff that's off to the sides, that's not from wind. That's from birds rooting around in there. Again, I don't need ducks and I don't need chickens. I've got hundreds and hundreds. Let me just pick the camera up. This is a forest. It's full of all kinds of wild animals. And the ones that I don't want are kept out by a fence. But I can't keep the birds out. Lucky for me, the birds that come into my garden, they're not after my vegetables. They do like my grapes and they like my blueberries, but they're not after my greens, they're not after potatoes, they're not after beans. They have no interest in that. They're after my bugs. And for the most part, they're after, you know, the bugs that are a problem for me. So I love having them in my garden. This is a lot easier. I just let them do their thing during the day, and they're here all day doing the thing. Here's another neat example. I don't know how well you can see this, but down here there's just like little holes where they've pecked and pecked, pecked and pecked, right? And that is so much better than a chicken coming in and scratching everything up and tearing the whole thing apart. These are just small birds, little hole here, right? They can hear, they're coming in, they're listening, they know where the grub is or the insect is, and they just peck and they find it and they eat it. And yes, they're taking some worms, but I think the net effect is that they're managing a lot of my pests for me. And since we're talking about pests, I thought I'd show you, boy, I can barely see in this camera here, but that's a deer track right there. So this is the area outside my garden enclosure, right? So there's no fence protecting this area, and I plant certain things that I found deer don't bother, squash, garlic, onions, potatoes, stuff like that, tomatoes. But there's a deer track from a good sized deer, right? There's another one right there. And I guess they went this way. The deer went that way. I don't know where he went after that. But I've got one thing I love about having the sand out here is I can see what animals have gone through here. And I can even tell that the deer, as far as I can tell, is probably walking in this garden as well, because I can see some holes in it. So yeah, they're definitely out here. Be cool to see. There's some more. Look, the deer was right. Yeah, there's another track right there. Right, that's a deer track. Another one went, it might have been the same one, but it went that way. Luckily they didn't try to jump my fence. And there's a huge hole in here. Probably walked in my garlic path as well. There's a number of holes that don't look like bird. When a deer walks, it just makes a depression, whereas a bird sort of throws things aside. You can kind of tell the difference of what kind of animal's been in there. The deer's not beneficial at all, but I just thought I'd show you other examples of the wildlife in my garden. Certainly the deer were out here last night. There's some more tracks there. They were definitely out here having a look around last night. But yeah, there's obvious. It's a potato garden, and to me, anyway, there's obvious footprints. Right here, for example, there's a really obvious depression in the ground, probably a deer. And it's not a pecking hole; it's more of a depression. So anyway, I got deer out here, but luckily there doesn't seem to be, you can tell by looking at my garlic here, they're not interested in the garlic, thankfully. So every once in a while I'll see a garlic that's had the end bitten off, but they don't, generally speaking, they don't come back for more. Anyway, yeah, I just thought I'd do a short video on that. I don't need ducks. I mean, it'd be great to have ducks. I'd love to have ducks and chickens, but I don't have the time to deal with them. But I don't eat them because I've got hundreds, maybe even thousands of birds. Not only do I have the birds that eat the slugs and the grubs and stuff like that, but I've got owls and hawks and all those kinds of things that take out voles and moles and those kinds of rodents, and squirrels, right? Because once the strawberries come around, squirrels can be a major problem. I mean, squirrels aren't deterred by my fence. I think they're my major strawberry. I mean, some birds get at strawberries, but not too much. It's really the squirrels that get at the strawberries and tend to do the most damage. But certainly on a nice, bright, sunny day like this, I wouldn't want to be a squirrel hanging around this garden, because there are eagles and ospreys circling overhead all the time. And honestly, I think when you establish a garden like this, what you're doing is creating a little ecosystem within a broader ecosystem. I think what you're doing is like you're ringing a dinner bell. You're creating a different kind of habitat than is in the surrounding area. And over time, the various living things that live in that area come to see your garden as a place to be for certain things. I've got a little pond that's a good place to get water. I really should put a water source in the center of the garden to bring more birds in. It's just one of those many things I keep meaning to do and don't get around to do. But I still think that over time, as birds are setting up their nests and so on and so forth, they're probably getting, coming back each year and setting up shop near my garden, because it's a great place to get snails and grubs and worms and things like that. It's plentiful for them, and it's a safe place because I like them being here, and it's a good place for them to be. So anyway, just some thoughts on that topic. I thought that might be interesting to some people. I hope that was interesting to you, and if it was, please like, share, subscribe. Check out my podcast, maritimegardening.com. And until next time, get out there, get at it, Have fun in your garden. Thanks for watching.